Hello and welcome to another episode of Gotham Sound TV. I am very happy to be here with Glenn Sanders, and he's here today to talk about Nova. So Glenn, welcome.
Thank you, Peter. Always great to be here.
It's good to have you. Before us is Nova, and I'm intensely curious about it. So tell me a little bit about it. What is it?
Okay, well, first of all, Nova is a new mixer recorder for us. It basically is the result of, kind of a clean sheet of paper approach to it. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we have our Max recorder, which is an ENG style recorder. We have the Nomad, which has more features to it. It has built-in Zaxnet. And we have the Diva 24, which is really designed for sound cards. Mm-hmm. And what we wanted to do was not do something that would go on a cart, but definitely something that was optimized for the sound bag. Because there's a lot of things that I think people look for in a bag mixer recorder that I don't think they're getting. Uh-huh. So we wanted very much for Nova to not just be a mixer recorder, but to be a mixer recorder, have integrated wireless receivers in a very special way to give functions and abilities that you just don't get with any other system. And to combine all that with our Zaxnet capability, and it has a Zaxnet transmitter built in as well.
So tell me, take me a little bit through how this differentiates itself. So I know it's not Diva 24.
Right.
And I know it's not Nomad. So where does this live on the ecosphere?
Okay. Well, I would say to you that you have something that is the size of our Max recorder.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's pretty much equivalent to the smallest physical mixer recorders out there, mm-hmm. but yet with a feature set and track capability that is really beyond our Nomad. So we wanted to basically set a new standard for the sound bag when it comes to size and weight and power consumption. I think the most exciting thing is that you can put together a sound bag with the Nova and have that bag weigh literally 6 pounds for the Nova, the bag, and the battery. Mm-hmm. And that'll run for approximately 7 hours on a single charge.
And what else in my 6 pounds of weight am I getting besides the recorder and the battery and the bag?
Okay, well, you're getting a 12-track recorder with dual media recording. You're getting 4 channels of receiver, or you can plug in 4 channels of receiver. The receivers are separate. They don't come with it, just to get specific.
Show us.
Okay. Well, basically, this is Nova. And if I take Nova and flip it upside down, mm-hmm. you can see these receivers. Mm-hmm. But what you have there are 2 of the Zaxcom receivers that are the same receivers that go in our RX-12.
Actually the same that go in the RX-12.
They're actually the same. Uh-huh. And while I have it upside down, people are always concerned about how quick is it to change a receiver.
Yeah.
Because what people say is, well, gee, I don't want my receivers built in. Mm-hmm. Because if I have a problem, how quickly can I get it out?
Right.
So what I can show you is that's how long it takes to pull out.
Wow.
Okay, and it's hot swappable. I pulled it out, and you're going to notice Nova's still in record, and I can just take it, any receiver, mm-hmm. and just plug any receiver back into it, just very quickly and easily. And now I've got the receiver back. Huh. And in fact, I can go into the receiver screen, and the 2 receivers that are picking up you and me mm-hmm. are on the left side here. And right now I don't have any transmitters tuned into receiver number 2. And I have a full receiver interface here, just like in the RX-12.
Cool.
Yeah. And I'll get into what these buttons do.
So just to be clear, this can receive 4 separate transmitters.
It can receive 4 separate transmitters with up to 8 channels of audio, because you can receive 4 stereo transmitters
Right.
if you want to do surround work.
Sure.
So you can receive wirelessly two surround microphones with the built-in receivers. I mean, we'll get into the I/O, but getting back to what you asked, what's in it? So you've got the 12-track recorder, you've got 4 receivers, you have our mic plexer antenna distribution built in. And for those people that might not know what a mic plexer is, it's our fancy name for a filtered antenna distribution. As part of the Nova, what it does quite nicely is when you set the frequencies on the receiver, it'll tune the mic plexer to the center of that range of frequencies automatically. And that does a wonderful job at keeping the interference away from the receivers.
Yes. It's a great idea. And it'll do a scan of the available spectrum and program everything.
Well, yes. I mean, here's the beautiful part of that. If you go into the scan mode and do your frequency scan, it'll pick out the 4 best frequencies to work on. And if you press one button, it will rechannel the 4 receivers and remotely rechannel 4 transmitters, all in about 2 seconds. So what would normally take you, a long time, 10 minutes maybe, to go and round up the transmitters and do that,
right,
you can do that by pressing one button.
And it'll calculate frequencies that are free from intermod?
Well, yeah. Basically, when you do a scan, it'll pick the best frequencies based on the fact that the frequencies are open. With the Zaxcom system, there's never any intermodulation concerns. All it has to do is space the frequencies far enough apart so that you don't have any interference based on them being too close together. So typically it would pick something about 400 kilohertz apart, even though you can go closer than that. An interesting thing is, like we said, there's no intermodulation, but also the mic plexer filter in here is really important, because what it does for you, besides getting rid of other wireless microphones that might interfere, it does a really good job at wiping out walkie-talkie interference. I mean, if you're down around 520 megahertz, you've got walkie-talkies at 460. There's a lot of systems that just actually accentuate the walkie-talkies, where with a Nova, it's actually wiping out the RF by as much as 40 dB from the walkie. So walkie-talkies keyed up near the bag or a sound cart with this, even though, again, it's for really a sound bag, will have no interfering properties, and that's really, really important.
Yeah, that's great.
This is your editor with some late-breaking news from Zaxcom. In addition to the features Glenn has already mentioned, the Nova will contain a Zaxcom AutoMix function with a new interface, and it will also support the Oasis control surface.
All right, so take us through some more stuff.
Okay, well, it has our Zaxnet transmitter. So the Zaxnet transmitter is actually a little bit more powerful than our previous transmitters. So the range will be a bit improved on our ERX receivers. So you're transmitting Zaxnet audio, and the audio can be assigned to any output bus.
Right.
So you don't have to have an IFB transmitter in your sound bag. All you have to do is just have the antenna on the side of the Nova, and it's going to transmit IFB audio to anyone who's within, let's say, 100 feet of the sound bag. It's also transmitting time code, so that the moment you switch on a Zaxcom transmitter or an ERX receiver, it'll have the time code of the Nova. Now, the great part about this is there's no jamming. Okay, you're not stopping, and physically jamming anything. The moment you switch something on, it's got the code. And if you change the code on the Nova, it's going to automatically update the entire production, just by changing it on the Nova, because it's real-time transmitted to all the body-worn transmitters, the boom pole, the ERXs. You'll see here the code is 36, 57, 58, 59, which matches the ERX.
Right.
So that's all, again, automatic.
Great.
So you've got the Zaxnet transmitter. Relatively speaking, the only thing you need to add to this in a sound bag is a battery. Okay, If you wanted to add a Zaxcom stereo link for a UHF stereo transmission to camera, you could do that if you needed high quality camera link audio. But again, you don't even have to do that. You can use the ERXs, which are the 2.4 gig monitor. You can put those on camera.
Right.
So, the idea is, you've got the bag itself, you have the batteries, you have the recorder, you have, a separate IFB, you have all the receivers, you have a holder for the receivers. You're lugging around 20 to 30 pounds, not to mention all the batteries you need to run a full day.
Right.
Because with Nova, you can run 7 hours on a single battery. I mean, here's the battery that's running this Nova, and it's a 98 watt-hour, 6.8 amp battery, lithium ion, and it's almost as heavy as the recorder. But again, the recorder and this battery are all you really have to have in a sound bag. So you've got a 6-pound sound bag.
You'll make a lot of chiropractors happy or sad, I'm not sure, but good. Now that you're not precluded from plugging in other audio.
Not at all. And I'm really happy you mentioned that. Let's talk about the I/O. You've got 4 mix pre's with Neverclip, and we do need to review Neverclip a little bit, because with this product, it actually gets better than it has been. We have a newer A to D converter in here, giving us Neverclip dynamic range of 140 dB.
Let's talk about Neverclip in the context of the wireless channels.
Okay.
Because the A to D conversion is happening at the transmitter.
Well, that's right. And the transmitters also have Neverclip. So the transmitter's dynamic range is 126 dB,
Okay.
which is actually better than the lavaliers that you hook to them. So if you set up your transmitters appropriately, you will never clip your transmitter. And that translates to what's coming in to the recorder. So the dynamic range is really amazing on the wireless, but that's a separate wireless function, because Neverclip is associated with a preamp, okay, whether it's the preamp in the transmitter or the preamp in the Nova.
So now moving to the preamps in the Nova for the external inputs.
For the external inputs, all 4 mic pre's have Neverclip, now with a dynamic range of 140 dB.
And those 4 mic preamps exist separately from the 4 receiver inputs.
Correct. The receivers are AES connected, digitally connected into the Nova. Okay. So, you've got, the moment you go A to D in the transmitter, the signal is never analog again within our system. Which is obviously a great thing, because the fewer conversions, the better. So you want a system that has one converter on the input side and is ones and zeros all the way through to post-production, and that's exactly what Zaxcom Digital Wireless combined with our system will do. So yeah, we had to go AES out of the receivers, because to not do it would compromise the audio, and we can't do that. It's got to be perfect.
Fantastic. So 4 AES inputs for the receivers, which are not exposed to an external connector.
Well, okay. They are normally not exposed. Let's go back to I/O a little bit more in depth.
Yes.
Okay. There's a DB15 on the side,
Okay.
which I will show here. So here we have AES I/O. You can see the DB9 or DB15 right there. And actually, this is the same wiring as the Nomad. So
good.
if you have Nomad cables, you can plug that right in.
Good.
And that's going to give you 4 channels of digital audio in on 2 AES pair. And that is also not only AES3, but AES42.
That's exciting.
Right, so you can run 2 AES42 microphones right from that port. So that's all really good. And you have 6 AES output buses on this connector as well.
Good.
Which correspond to the 6 buses inside the unit. So
Got it.
that's right there.
And so those 4 AES inputs exist separately from the receivers.
They exist separately from the receivers. Now we have a module, a separate little piece of hardware that is identical to the size of the receiver. Here's
Got
one
it.
of the receivers
Yeah.
that will have over on this side 2 SMA connectors and 2 TA5s. So that's the receiver replacement interface.
Got it.
So if you wanted to hook one of our external receivers or another brand,
Got it.
you can simply get that inexpensive interface, plug it in, and that's going to give you 12 channels total of AES input to Nova, and also antenna distribution for 3 external receivers, because each one of the modules will give you 2 SMAs, and there's 2 modules. And then over on this side of the machine, you can see the RF output A and RF output B. And you can also see the flux capacitor symbol, which shows you that these are filtered by the flux capacitor. Right there.
Got it.
Yeah, well, you got to have a little Back to the Future nod.
Yes.
You have to. It's important.
Sure. Yes. That's good. So that is post filter though.
It is post-filter, but that's a really good thing, because any receiver you hook up is only going to see 35 megahertz of what's coming in through the antennas. So it will shield a receiver that doesn't have the same filtering
Yep.
as the Zaxcom receiver, effectively giving it the same front-end filter as the Zaxcom receiver.
It's great. And I can go in and dial in the parameters of the filter if I want to. I can tweak it from what it sets.
If you want to, you can. There's 2 modes. It's either auto set
Yeah.
or manual set.
Okay.
There's so much going on here, whether it's the recorders, the wireless, or the IFB, that, when they're working together, there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
But standing alone, if you just want to get the Nova, you want to hook it up to some other brand of receiver, you want to use some other brand of IFB, absolutely, it's going to work. It's going to work very well with those products.
Fantastic. So I have my all my inputs. I have my outputs.
We have the Walkie Talkie interface. What we did here is we took one of the outputs and we set it up so that when you press the COM button on the front panel, it will key a Motorola Walkie Talkie that's plugged into output number 6, so that you can utilize a walkie talkie to talk back, with just pressing the COM button and talking right into the front of the Nova.
Now this is made for reality television mixers. Those, I don't know how they do it, but those mixers are constantly being chatted to on Walkie Talkie.
Well, absolutely. I got a request, and I will mention the name, Rado Stefano, who said, hey, it would be really nice if I didn't have to manually pick up a walkie and talk.
Yeah.
If I could just, with one hand, just press the COM button and talk back through a walkie. And I think that's a really great idea and a neat feature.
Yeah.
So Nova's the first mixer recorder to do that.
That's cool. That's cool. Tell me about the mixing engine.
Well, what we have inside is a 32-bit floating point mixing engine.
Okay.
When something comes in on an analog input, utilizing 2 converters, it generates this 140 dB never clip signal. We're able to put that into the mixing engine, and because the dynamic range of that is basically infinite, you can't clip the internal mixer. So if something's hot, you just bring down the fader, and you'll never clip the mixer. It'll just go right into the mix, and away you go. And then on the output side, we go into our files, which are fixed point files, but we have something called, we have attenuation on those files to make everything fit perfectly in a fixed point system.
In 24 bits.
In 24 bits, yeah. Because we're only generating like 23 bits of data, so it fits.
Mm-hmm. It's just where you put it in those 23
Exactly.
bits.
It's just, we just slide everything down to fill up what would normally be noise bits.
Mm-hmm.
And that works out very nice. So mixing engine wise, that's the number of bits we have in the mixer. We have 12 tracks, and each track happens to be a mix bus.
Mm-hmm.
So I can make an independent mix on each of the 12 tracks.
Right.
My 6 output buses are also independent mix buses, so that I can make a mix there as well.
But just because it's a mix doesn't mean, like some of them you would treat as ISOs. Is that the idea?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you would route them as ISOs.
Right.
You can route any input to any output or track pre-fader or post-fader or phase inverted if you like to do that as well. Yeah, so it's basically what I call an infinite mixer.
And the normal things one might find on a mixer, like EQ and high pass, what exists?
We don't have EQ.
Okay.
Okay, just because in the Max and in the Nomad, we never had EQ. What we do have is high pass filter, and we have 2-notch filters on every channel. So that if you walk into a situation where you've got 60 hertz hum coming from lighting or wherever it may be coming from, you can notch that out. You know, I mean, EQ, and this is a philosophical thing, you know, a lot of people say don't EQ anything, that's a post-production function, let them do it.
Talk to me about headphone monitoring.
Headphone monitoring is really nice. In fact, if you go back to the overhead, you can see that right now it says headphone 12. If I hit the soft key where it says headphone 12, it allows me to actually step. Let me kind of go back over here. It allows me to step through headphone memories. And if I hit it again, you can see the routing for this, where I can go through and I can route. Right now I have track 1 routed to the headphone. I can make a mix and route any number of tracks I want to route to the headphone. I can route returns as well as outputs to the headphone.
And those are presets.
Those, well, yes and no. They become presets, but you have 12 ways to do it. You know, you have 12 presets, and Nova's really smart in that if you don't have anything routed, it won't even let you go there. So in other words, if you only have 2 headphone presets routed, it's only going to allow you to toggle between those 2 because the others don't do anything.
Right, got it.
You know,
smart.
Yeah. So,
and I think we should also, while we're on that screen, there's something very pleasing about what you've done with this screen. Can you walk us through what's going on the screen itself?
I think what you're referring to are those 6 keys around the screen. That's something that I think we did really well. This is the first time that we've ever done anything like this. Zaxcom has either had full touchscreen control, or we've had no touchscreen. So, you know, we go both ways on that. What I wanted to do here is I did want to have a touchscreen, but I realized for a touchscreen to be workable, it has to be a certain size. A 2-inch touchscreen is not a workable touchscreen. Right. Especially when you're outside doing ENG work, potentially with gloves on.
In the winter, yeah.
Right, which the touchscreen isn't going to work anyway with gloves on, okay? Most of them. Right. So what I decided to do was come up with the 6 soft keys. And by the way, notice they go to 11 right there. I came up with the 6 soft keys. So what we do with these keys is we allow them to do different things depending upon the menu. If I go back home, you'll see it says headphone tracks and outputs, and you'll see that actually kind of slid off the screen in sort of an animated way. Yes. I'll do that again for those people that might not have caught that. So it shows you what the keys are doing, and then it gets out of the way. So if I wanted to go into my receiver menu, I can hit the F9 and go into the receiver menu. If I want to go into the track menu, I can go F7 and go to the track menu. And once I'm in the track menu, it's showing me the arrows that show me that right now I'm on tracks 1 through 4. This will be routing tracks 5 through 8 and routing 9 through 12. So you've got all the track routing right here, as if the screen is a much bigger screen. We're actually able to move around. Picture that I'm moving downward now, okay? And if I go back to the top, I've got the ability to route my analog tracks, my digital tracks, and my receiver tracks.
It's a very clever interface. I really like it.
Thank you. Yeah, this is something that I agonized over because I wanted to make sure that even with a small screen, it had the usability of a big screen in a really super intuitive way. And we were able to accomplish that with this interface. And these buttons are very, very tactile. Even with gloves, you know, they do make a little kind of click and they have a feel to them. So that's all really good. So, you know, while we're here, we should talk about probably the most important user interface difference. So you've got 5 knobs here. And you can see around the knob, I have LEDs. There's actually 16 LEDs. And these are showing us quite a few things. I have input meters for each of those knobs showing me what's going on in the input. There is a highlighted LED. I'm not going to adjust one of the channels for our faders, but you can see as I turn the knob, you can see the LED pointer change. Okay, so right now we are in fader mode. The reason I know we're in fader mode is because I don't have the trim function activated or the Zaxnet control function activated. So the bank key, which is yellow, and also the fader at the faders, there's yellow at the top here. This is on bank 1, okay? If I hit the bank key, it'll go to another bank. And also if you watch the home screen, it'll show me what is routed. So I've got on bank 2, it showed me that the faders are RX channel 1, 2, 3, and 4 on bank 2. And that's why I do actually have, I have meters happening here on that bank as well. So that's bank 2. If I go to bank 3, I've got receiver channels 5, 6, 7, and 8, and the color turns purple. So I'm able to actually use the 5 faders to control up to 25 sources almost instantly. So I go back to bank 1, and here I am, and I'm able to make adjustments to our microphones or anything here. So, you know, it is very quick to change banks, and part of what it does is it will not go to a bank that has nothing assigned. So if I only wanted to change back and forth between a couple of channels, I can just assign 2 banks and do that. Now, one of the clever things here is the banks allow you to take the same channel and assign it to multiple banks. So that, let's say for argument's sake, I'm going to mix 4 wireless microphones. And I always want those wireless microphones on faders 1 through 4. Okay. What I also may do is I might have something going on fader 5 that changes bank to bank. Okay. When I do that, there's nothing assigned here, so there's no lights on it. Okay. So if I come back here to bank 1, you know, this is actually assigned as a master right now, fader number 5.
Okay.
And the reason I know it's a master is I've got 3 LEDs traveling together to show me that there's a group of channels on this, and that is a master. Okay. The channels or the faders that have only 1 LED, these are single. So you know what's going on. So maybe these 4 faders would stay on the same sources while fader number 5 changes from bank to bank.
Yeah.
So it's really versatile.
And that's all user selectable.
100%.
Because I'm thinking not a lot of people will need a master.
Oh yeah, no. That's all user selectable. If I come over here and go into fader assign, you'll see I'm on bank 1, and on fader number 5, I have 2 channels coming from my returns. So the 2 returns are controlled by this fader. If I come over and set up the cross point here, let's do this. Whoops, my fault. Okay. So I do that and I take this out, you'll see it goes to only 1 LED on the fader. So when I select the 2 channels, it knows it's a group. So you can do anything you want there. This is bank 1, and if I come over here and hit the arrow keys, I can go to bank 2, 3, 4, and you can see the faders show you what's going on as you do it. And there's bank 5. So going back to bank 1, I can route my analog inputs, my digital inputs, external, and then the receiver channels.
And there they are.
And there they are. So again, you know, you're taking this small screen and making it act like a screen that's like 4 times its size with this ability to quickly get where you want to go. So really, really intuitive. Now, the one thing that I haven't shown you, or 2 things I haven't shown you about this, which I think are the best thing.
Okay.
If I want to adjust the input trim on my microphone, okay? So here I am here. All I have to do is press the trim button. So now the trim button is blinking. This is actually the input trim for the Nova's mic input.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm adjusting that on the same fader. So by hitting a button, now it's the fader that I'm adjusting. Okay, now it's the trim, and if I hit the Zaxnet button,
Right.
now it's the transmitter on my belt.
That's great.
Okay, all from the same knob, all literally instantly. You know, one thing we wanted to do here was make sure that this unit, while small, had far better functionality.
It really is well thought out. It's really it's really great.
Yeah, this is something that I think going forward, this is the way it'll be done. It will not be done with the classic structure that we've seen, you know, going way back to things like the Shure FP33.
But yeah, I mean, it still has a very analog feel to it, which is great. It's very intuitive, just like the FP32, 33.
Take your pick.
Yeah. All right. So we've talked about inputs. We've talked about outputs. Mix engines. What is it recording to?
Well, it's recording to 2 compact flash cards. There's a circuit board, which I am holding right here, and this is the interface board for the compact flash cards. The reason that this is important is that this can be changed by a user. All you need is a screwdriver. You take off the cover. There's 2 screws that hold this in. Pulls right out, new one plugs right in.
Why would I want to do that?
Well, it is not a common thing, but it is not inconceivable that a bad compact flash card could bend a pin on the connector. I wanted to make it so that I could FedEx this board to you, and you being the customer, and you can change this board out.
Very smart.
Yeah, the other thing about this board is that, you know, if we want to make a replacement board for some different media, it's just a board.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's a neat thing. And while talking about media, what I do want to point out is that this works with cards off of Amazon. You know, there's a couple brands we prefer, like SanDisk or Transcend, but you can go out and get the best price and best supplier for your media.
Very cool. What can I record to anything simultaneously on those CF cards? What's going on?
Well, basically, you are recording all 12 tracks to both cards simultaneously. And for any reason, if anything happens to the mirror card where it stops recording, it's able to automatically pick that up.
So for those that don't know, what does mirror mean?
Mirror is basically something we came up with for the Diva 2, where we record to the primary media, and then you hit stop, or used to hit stop, and then it would transfer the files to the secondary drive, which would go to post-production. The primary card, the main recording, is done in something called MARF, which is Zaxcom's mobile audio recording format. And with this format, you're able to actually lose power in the middle of a recording, and this goes for our wireless as well. When you power back up, the system realizes, hey, there's an open file, and it perfectly closes that file. Because the file not only contains the audio data, but it contains the directory within the file itself. So it's able to look at the open file, know exactly where it has to close the file, and then you can pick it up. All of the software that we produce is perfect for making sure that you never have any issue of lost data. In fact, you can erase a memory card, you know, just absolutely erase the card. You can then use our software to rebuild the directory with MARF, even though you have, quote unquote, erased the card. So MARF is a really fail-safe system.
And this recorder benefits from that technology.
Absolutely, yeah. It more than benefits. It's you know, it's something we're very proud of, and it's saved a lot of people's butts over the years.
Nice.
One more late-breaking update from Zaxcom. The Nova will also record to MP3.
What else would you like to talk about?
Well, I think I just want to talk a little bit more about Zaxnet for a few minutes. Zaxnet is a 2.4 gig signal that we transmit from the recorder that contains 3 things. It contains IFB audio, contains time code, and contains remote control for all of our wireless. So using Zaxnet, there's some pretty amazing things you can do. when you change frequencies on a receiver manually, it'll do the receiver and instantly change the transmitter as well. When you go into record on the Nova, if you have Zaxcom recording transmitters, it'll put the transmitters in record or stop them if you go into stop mode. So on the body-worn recorders, you can have matching files that match what's on the main recorder, which is pretty amazing. Of course, Zaxnet is going to transmit, as we said earlier, the time code to the recorder, so the moment you switch them on, they've got the correct code. There is no physical jamming. A special feature of Zaxnet is the fact that you can use the recorder to allow the transmitters to rebroadcast pre-recorded data. Meaning that if you had some sort of, whatever it was, interference, or maybe even you didn't roll the recorder, you're able to tell the transmitters to queue up to a time code location and to synchronize themselves in play, and you can re-record a full take from all the transmitters as if it was happening for the first time.
Wow.
Another neat new feature that this has is the ability to use the transmitter's name in a much more prominent way. Meaning, if you put a name in the transmitter, the transmitter uses that name on the file that's in the transmitter. But the transmitter also transmits the name along with the data.
Over Zaxnet.
Not over Zaxnet. On UHF, it transmits it.
So anything from the transmitter back to the home base is UHF. Anything from the home base to the transmitter is Zaxnet.
That's right.
Okay.
So, but this is all tied into Zaxnet. So when it transmits the name to the recorder can see, let's say it's on receiver input number 1, and it sees that this transmitter is called Glenn, and yours is called Peter. It'll take those names and it'll name those inputs Glenn and Peter.
And that carries through to the metadata.
That carries through the metadata, and if you take those inputs and make ISO tracks, it'll label the ISO tracks. So let's say your transmitter goes away because you're not in this scene. Okay? If you pick up another transmitter and put it on the same frequency and it's got another character's name, then that character's name automatically goes on the ISO track. So you're done labeling ISO tracks. You're done labeling inputs if you have this system. And I think that's a pretty neat new feature. And yeah, so Zaxnet is a really special thing, and it's pretty cool.
All right, let's take a minute. I think there's a couple of things we have to cover still. I think the best way to do that is let's sort of go through the physical unit one more time.
Of course.
So, looking at the top, the first thing that strikes me about the interface, we went over the soft keys, we went over the fader banks, we went over the, how you can control so much in an elegant way in a small amount of real estate. What I think is also worth talking about is you can do it with one hand.
Well, that's right. Another thing that we've done here that I think is really smart is we decided to add a whole bunch of the key functions as shifted keys, but basically the idea came up that while they're shifted keys, so in other words, if I want to go into record enable, I can hold down the menu key to shift and hit record enable and I get there. That's all fine, but if you're holding a boom pole and trying to press buttons at the same time, not as convenient as it could be. So what we did was, on any of these functions, if you press and hold the key for a moment, it'll go to the function. So I didn't have to hold the shift. So if I just hit the key, okay, it'll do what it's supposed to do. Like, for instance, this is a PFL key. All 5 keys here are PFL keys. But if I wanted to go to scene take note entry, just press and hold it, and it'll go there. So there's that. We have our cue menu. If I press and hold that, and that's to queue up different segments. Output routing, which is also up here on a soft key. Oops. So we have that. So again, you can get to any of these shifted functions by pressing and holding the key, which is really, really good.
Smart.
Yeah.
Show me the inputs on this.
Okay. So inputs are actually on both sides. So if we look at this side, we have the XLR inputs, right here, inputs 1 through 4. These are mic line. We have our RS422 connector, which will be for external interfaces like the Oasis mixing surface at some point.
Wow, that's huge. So this will work with the control surface.
It'll work with the control surface.
That's huge. So it'll go from bag to cart very elegantly.
It will. I mean, again, designed for a bag, but if someone wants to put it on a cart, it'll certainly work that way. That's fine. So here we have the 2 power inputs. These are redundant inputs, so that if you're in a sound bag and you want to keep rolling, but you have to change power, you can plug another battery into this connector and then pull this one if you wanted to. Or you could just leave them both hooked up, for that matter, and it will drain both batteries. Basically, whichever battery is the higher one will be the one that will be utilized.
Okay.
There are no internal batteries. Okay. The reason there are no internal batteries is the unit is basically full of receivers. And I think that that's a much better use of the internal space rather than batteries.
And so no safety battery, no.
Well, when you say safety battery, we don't need a safety battery because it has MARF.
And for keeping time code?
There is a coin battery, but that lasts for years.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically I'm talking about powering the unit. There's no internal battery because you don't really want to have a lithium ion battery inside your recorder, because if something were to happen to that battery and you had a small explosion or fire or something, you're going to lose your recorder.
Yeah.
There's just no way, that you're not going to. So we don't want batteries in the unit anyway, and frankly, over the years, the batteries people use have changed.
Right.
So you never have to worry that your internal battery is going to be obsolete, replaced by a different model.
And 10 to 18 volts is a wide range. That's terrific.
Exactly. So we felt that the external power was a smart thing. Here we have the RF out, which is basically the 2 antennas filtered by the mic plexer internal.
Yep.
We have another SMA here, which is the Zaxnet antenna, and this is broadcasting the 2.4 gig signal.
Got it.
And on this side, we have the output buses, where you can see output bus 1 and 2 in analog mode are actually duplicated. So if you want to feed 2 different cameras off of output buses 1 and 2, you have 2 connectors for it. The interesting part about this is all the outputs are selectable to be line level, -10, or mic level at -35. So you get a really good selection of output levels. And what I want to point out about this is we do it what I'll call the right way, meaning that we properly attenuate it, not by simply cutting bits off where you lose resolution, but we actually compress the signal so that if a signal is at line level or at mic level, it still has the same dynamic range, the same number of different levels.
Yes.
And I think that's a very unique thing. So you don't lose dynamic range between mic level and line level. It's all identical dynamic range. So I think that's a pretty good thing.
Yes.
So we have 2 analog bus 1 and 2.
Got it.
2 line level returns, and then there's buses 3, 4, and 5, 6.
Got it.
And again, here's the analog I/O for all the, digital I/O for all the AES in and out, and the 2 card slots here. You've got the mirror slot on top, and the primary card on the bottom.
And that mic on a Mini, that's for a slate mic?
That's for a slate mic.
All right.
And that slate mic can take a balanced input, so it can take a dynamic balanced mic, and it can also power a, like a lavalier microphone.
Like a little electret.
A little electret mic, yeah.
Great.
So it's very versatile in what it can do. And of course, we have BNCs for time code in and out, as well as the main power switch over here on the side.
And where is the Dante connector?
The Dante connector. Well, I'm very happy you asked about Dante, because in this product, it doesn't have Dante. And let me tell you why. Dante is a very important interface, but not for something designed for a sound bag. The reason that we don't have it is the overhead involved with Dante of just getting multiple audio channels from point A to point B, which is what Dante was designed for, is just too high. If I wanted to get 24 channels of audio from a sound card to Video Village, from a stage to a mixing desk, and I wanted to run at 100 feet, Dante's great. But we're talking about getting audio from point A to point B.
Right.
First of all, you don't have to do that with this because the sources of audio are basically contained inside in the receiver. And any external receiver you have, let's say, whether it's a 2-channel Zaxcom receiver or a 2-channel receiver from another company, it doesn't have Dante. So if you're going to spend, let's say, maybe up to 500 milliamps to generate a Dante signal and 500 milliamps to decode that Dante signal, that's as much as this mixer recorder draws to run the whole thing with 4 channels of receiver.
Right.
So you're going to cut your battery life in half by having Dante.
Fair. There's a lot to take in on this you and mixer, and I think you've really done an amazing job.
Thank you.
Everybody at Zaxcom has. It's great. Everything seems really well thought out here.
Well, thank you. I think I think we certainly have the experience and track record of producing these kinds of products, and we have the ability to look backwards and understand what we got very, very right, and maybe some decisions we made that were not as good.
Right.
So we took the best of the best and tried to improve upon that. And look, this is different, but I think that people are going to look at the differences and identify those differences as distinct advantages over any somewhat similar product and realize that this is a great thing. I will just add that when you combine it, with the wireless system into a cohesive package, it's just pretty much without equal. And I'm very proud to be here to show it to you today.
Excellent. Thank you. Will you stay here just while we sign out?
Absolutely.
Visit us, video archives at gothamsound.tv. Follow us Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Send ideas for future shows to info@gothamsound.com. Thank you for watching. Thanks to the crew. See you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.